My name is Maureen Sullivan, and I'm a librarian with Librarians Without Borders. And I'm here today to share with you some strategies about fostering talk in the library and promoting language development in the library. I first wanted to think about what we already know about language and about language development. And a lot of the research says that children learn more vocabulary from their classmates than from their teachers. And so, in thinking about that, how can we structure talk in the library to promote talk uh, from child to child interactions and not just answering a librarian or a teacher um, to promote that rich vocabulary development? Many, if not all, students in the libraries where you work are learning a second language, in this case, Spanish, and that requires more practice and more visual support. And so think about in your library, how are you supporting language? You have posters on the wall of questions that they ask about books or um, different songs that you're learning together or titles that you're reading. The more language, rich print environment that you can provide for the children, the better. Um, and it's important to consider that it takes a lot of practice to uh, integrate new vocabulary into your lexicon, into their daily speech. And so it's important to provide specific structures to help children practice that language. And that said, they learn a lot faster, and it's much easier and more exciting when it's an authentic purpose. And so, just repetition is not so fun. And so, think about how can you help children practice that language but make it exciting. And so, is it talking about their favorite book or sharing an experience that they've had, playing a game, or making new friends? Um, these are structures that are tried and true and really support language development. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And thinking about language in the library, libraries are founded upon language, and so they're natural places where language exists, primarily in the form of books, but also about sharing information and finding information. And in thinking about language, Spanish is the language of school and the language of the economy, but it isn't the only language. And so thinking about how are you supporting Spanish but still helping to maintain and honor home languages? Um, how can you learn another language without squelching the first language and have the library be a supportive place of both and really value bilingualism and multilingualism? The libraries can help support language learning by discussing and interacting with the reading that you're doing in the library. So making it not just a one-way street about reading aloud, but having children really participate and give their own input about what it is that they're reading. Contrary to historical perceptions of the library, it doesn't need to be a quiet place. I know libraries can be places of many different actions. It can be a place for homework, help. It can be a place for games. It can be a quiet place to read and study. And it can be a dynamic place of story time and songs and interaction. And so thinking about where in your schedule and in your day, how can you support all of those actions and help communicate to participants about what kind of a noise level is the library right now. Um, so that it's not always quiet, but there are times when it is quiet so that people can get the work done that they need. And what kind of symbols will you have to indicate how quiet it is? Is it a sort of noise level 1, 2, 3, or is it colors or some way so they understand that not all talk is the same volume? that using a teacher or a librarian's voice to read aloud a story is different than talking to a partner about what you think is going to happen next. And it's different than talking in a small group about putting on a puppet show about a story that you have read. And what happens when children are able to share their ideas orally, they can become more confident, they can take more risks academically, they share their ideas with their peers, and they learn and understand more and challenge each other to think more critically. And so it's not just about learning the language, it's also about learning, period, and expanding their thinking. One fantastic way to promote discussion in the library, promote talk in the library, is using community circles. And community circles are a way that you can have everyone share. It's an equalizer in that everyone has the ability to share something, an idea, an opinion, something about themselves, and or something about the book that they're reading. You can read here, there's a link to more information about restorative practices, and then there's another link here that you can see about the norms that you would set up to have a community circle. What are the agreements that everyone can share to have a circle run where everyone can be heard? You can pass around a stuffed animal or a little rock or something to indicate that the person that's holding that symbol, the talking piece, has the right to speak and everyone is listening to that person. Another strategy is called VTS. It's called Visual Thinking Strategies. And this was originally developed in art museums to promote interaction and talk about artwork. But it can be utilized with any image. So it could be looking at a photograph or a science experiment or looking at something outside and thinking about these three questions. What is happening? What is going on here? And then when a child shares their observation, what did you see that made you say that? To kind of probe further. And then the next question is, what else, what more can we find? Sort of push the children to think about, let's look deeper. Let's think more about what else can we observe. Here's an example of the Women's Building in San Francisco that's a mural and has many different people in it, but one of them is Rigoberta Menchú. What is going on here? What can we find? And there's a link here about this strategy called VTS if you're interested in learning more. Another strategy that you can develop during your story time to promote discussion is doing a strategy called Think, Pair, Share. And it's very simple and can be used over and over again. It starts with prompting the students to think of something that is regarding the story you're reading or an idea to prompt their thinking about a theme. They have a little wait time. They get to think on their own in their minds before they speak. And this really helps, especially language learners, have a little more time to prepare them for talking. And then they get together with a partner. And that partner could be pre-decided, or it could just be the person next to them, or it could be a small group. But it's a person that they can then share what they're thinking. It's a low-risk situation where it's just one person instead of speaking in front of the whole class. And it can also be considered a rehearsal where the child is able to kind of refine what it is that they want to say. And then when it is their turn to speak in front of the entire group, they're able to articulate themselves even better. It also gives them a chance to listen to someone else. And so everyone gets a chance to speak and maximizes their ability to produce and receive language, much more so than just one person speaking at a time in front of the whole group. And then the group can be opened back up to the whole group where the pairs can share out what they learned and what they heard. So a question for you to consider, how does this foster dialogue? Why is this strategy useful or more useful than just having questions posed to the whole group? What does this do for students? Another strategy that is often utilized with school age or older children is small groups. In this case, a book club. And these are groups that are from 3 to 6 people who are reading the same book or sections of the same book. There's an accompanying video to this lecture where you can see small groups that are having a discussion. Something to consider is that it takes a lot of time and practice for the groups to become more independent, and so don't despair. This is something that takes a while for children to feel comfortable leading the discussion, but some resources at the end of this lecture that you can see for more information. And another way that children can use language in the library is through presentations. So thinking about how they can interpret a story with puppets or themselves, act it out, tell a summary of a book, keep writing a new end to an old story, have mock interviews where they're able to interview a character from the story, have a roundtable discussion with multiple characters from the story, have kind of a talk show about the actions of the characters in the story. There's a strategy called Novel in an Hour where you divide the text in sections and then the participants can read those sections and then present them out to the whole group. Shared reading, that's reading aloud together where the students can present a part of the story or use just the illustrations to be able to tell the story aloud. Here's a link to a document that has some ideas for presentations, and you can also watch a video of some young preschool aged children interpreting this story, Hombre Luna. Here's some resources that you can check out about book clubs or about electronic books, if you have access to that. Some more ideas for story time and norms for community circles and ideas, question prompts for community circles as well. As usual, you can always contact me by email or Melanie Seller or Librarians Without Borders. And thank you for listening. I hope to be in touch soon.